Hi, this is Nicole de Larzac, and this is the Pricing on the Cake.
Welcome to the Pricing on the Cake, the podcast that's all about growing a profitable business confidently. Today on the show, I am honored to have our special guest, Nicole de Larzac. Did I get that right in the pronunciation?
That's right. Yes, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. First of all, would you mind just introducing yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I've listened to your episodes and I just love the concept. So thank you. I help women grow and launch a product business. I really see that launching and growing a product business can be overwhelming and also feels like a mystery to a lot of people. And I really believe it should be easier, that anyone can do this. Anyone should be able to do this. So my mission is to help women with a product idea, launch, and scale so they can have a business that gives them time freedom that they deserve.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that you're so mission oriented in that as well, in terms of like helping women achieve their dreams with the product that they want to launch. And I'm really excited about this conversation today because that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about, coming up with a product that's actually going to sell. That is actually going to be successful. A lot of my listeners are service-based businesses as well. So I'm hoping that some of the insights and principles you share are applicable to both sides. Would that be right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Either service-based or product-based can launch a product business, but also some of the business principles will apply to both.
Awesome. All right, good to know. That's awesome. So first off, tell me, why is it normally so hard to come up with an idea that's actually going to work?
Yeah, it's really okay. Sorry, I have to think about this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's fine. I kind of just launched you on that one.
Okay. Why is it so hard to come up with an idea? Okay. Yeah, it can be a struggle for some people to come up with an idea. It's actually, I find it two things. I find either that people can't come up with an idea, or they have too many ideas and they don't know what's going to work. So in the first case, I help women come up with a product idea, and we go through a step called ideation, where we look at different ways to brainstorm a product idea. And the first thing I'll say is to help solve a problem that already exists in the world. So identifying a problem and making sure that your product can solve it in some way. That is like the winning products follow that solution or formula. And so that's the first thing I'd say in terms of coming up with ideas.
Okay.
And there's so many other ways to come up with ideas for launching a product. The other ways are to look at trends out there in the market, and there's different resources for that. But I mean, COVID, as an example, has brought about so many trends.
Oh,
not some that we don't want.
Yeah.
But really, like things like self-care are really growing, and actually the number one selling product forecasted for this year is these peel-off masks in Shopify.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's hilarious. But self-care has really become a thing. And so we see candles and soaps and really getting back to those kind of like calming, soothing kind of products. And it brought a bunch of different services like food delivery that we probably wouldn't have thought of before, but now we are thinking of. So just looking at product trends and what you could do to either capture a trend or even start a new trend.
Okay.
And then another way is to interview your target market or even your customers and find out what they want. So if you have a business, you can interview your customers or interview your target market, discover their pain points and address them. And also improving an existing product and just either making yours different or better. You don't actually have to invent something totally new. So those are different ways to come up with a product idea. And then the other thing is, if you have too many ideas, you really want to narrow it down. And different ways to do that is, one is to actually test it with your target consumer. And that is the most important step, I say, for people, is to make sure you get feedback before you go into all the stages of product development, because feedback is so important. And when people skip this step, I really see that their ideas just don't go ahead, or they're really taking risks.
Yeah,
So those are a
definitely.
couple of ways to make sure that you are coming up with the right idea.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with testing the product or service idea in the market and getting that feedback from customers. And I'm always telling people that they should be, insatiably curious about their customers and what they think and how they feel and what they value, because what they value is where their money is going to go. In terms of, for let's say for women who are starting out or maybe in the early stages of their business and they have their product or service idea and they want to test it and get feedback from their target market, but they don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and do focus groups or, massive big surveys and things like that. What are some ways that, someone who's just on their own could actually go out and do similar sort of testing?
Yes, for sure. Well, technology has made things so much easier and less costly for us. For us as like the normal everyday person, you can just set up a Google form. It's a simple Google form. It's free and you can
Yeah.
set up a full survey. And we actually do that in a course that I teach. We set up a Google form survey with different concepts and we test different questions like
Mhm.
how likely is it that you purchase this product, what are the things that you like, what do you dislike, and you can get like a ton of feedback from just a simple survey.
Mm.
So that is one way to do it. Another way is to have focus groups and interview your target market. So maybe just even over Zoom, because I know that we can't get together now, but have a
Yeah.
Zoom focus group and ask them a bunch of questions and really probe and make sure you do have a bunch of questions that you are kind of asking. That's what
Yeah.
like a typical research moderator would do. They would have a full questionnaire. So really know what you're trying to get out of your research before you
Yeah.
just dive in and ask questions. But those are two ways and they're
Mhm.
free. So yeah, definitely you can
Absolutely.
do it on your own.
Yeah, sure. And you mentioned before that, one of the reasons it's so difficult to come up with a really good idea is because a lot of people have way too many ideas. And I know I've definitely been guilty of this from time to time in terms of just having so many ideas for things that I want to do, but we have limited time, right? So, how do you normally recommend your clients to narrow down their ideas?
Yes. Well, one way, as I mentioned, for sure, is through research.
Hmm.
We typically we start wide. So we brainstorm a ton of ideas. And then we start to narrow down those ideas based on just small things, not small things, but just like some qualifiers. Like, is it feasible? Is it something that I could actually launch? Because you're not going to just, develop a new car if you don't have the funds to
Yeah,
develop that, right? So that's just
definitely.
one thing you want to tick off that list. And another is, are you passionate about it? And that is so
Mm,
important because gosh, like you're going to be working really hard and you'll be spending a lot of time and there will be things that kind of get in your way and obstacles. So you want to make sure you're truly passionate about whatever it is you're doing.
mm,
And so it's kind of your baby now, right? So that is another sort of measure that we look at. Another one is it scalable? So
mhm.
is it like something that you're making and you are trading your time for money kind of thing? Like as a maker, a lot of makers tend to start like that, but eventually can you outsource the making of it? Can you hire other people to make it? And that is super important because you want to build a business that you can actually scale.
Oh, yeah.
So an example of this would be a cake maker, like a cake decorator. Can you teach other people to do the same thing you're doing, or do you have to do everything yourself? So just really looking at that. And another thing is I like to teach my students or my clients that it's very important to have repeated purchases. So
Mhm.
is it a product that people will buy over and over again, or will they come back to your store for other things? Because if not, it's very expensive to drive customers to your site and to get
True.
that first purchase, to get the website traffic and whatever. So you want to capitalize on whatever customers come. So I like to look at consumable products for that reason, or even things like subscription products, things that people will buy over and over again.
Yeah, definitely.
And
That's a good
then
logic behind that.
lastly, oh, sorry, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And then lastly, when we're just kind of paring down the ideas, then we just go down the list and, how sort of gut check on, is that something I would purchase? And then also
Mm.
get some feedback from other people as it as to whether or not it's something they would purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we have sort of a narrow list of ideas, we get into concept testing where we fully test those ideas. And that requires a written description of your idea and the benefits and the price and etc., as well as a photo or a picture, some kind of image that would show what it would look like so that they can really understand it. And we test for things like, likability, how much would they pay for it, what would they improve, and all that kind of thing to see if it's actually something they would buy. And then from there, we pick the best concept or best one or two, and we go forward and we refine it and so on. So it's really kind of a process of going from big to small.
Awesome. Oh no, I love it. I love the like the steps in there. They're all very clear and they make sense as well. And I think, yeah, no, that sounds awesome. I'm just thinking too, like, because I know that I know a lot of my listeners are people who are, say, in the first few years of running a business. A lot of those women as well are women who've come with no business experience. What would you say to a woman who's, say, either just about to start or has just started her business and she doesn't have a lot of business experience or hasn't run a business before, but she does, want to create a product or a service that she wants to scale? Is it still possible to have a successful business?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, a client of mine, here's an example. She is a physician and a mom of four. So you can imagine how busy her life is.
Yes.
Four small
I don't
girls.
want to imagine.
I know. And so she launched a business during COVID, and it's called Stainless Sea if you want to look it up. It's really cool. So yeah, she launched a business and she's been doing really well, just like sort of educating herself on how to launch the business. And then we've been working together on different strategies. So definitely it's possible. You will have to educate yourself more. So, it might be worth, if you are in that position, to get some help. Either hire a coach, or you can hire an agency or whatever it is. To have someone who's kind of done it and been there is very helpful, because there are things you may not be as great at doing. Like social media is one of that. Outsourcing certain things, like if you're not great at social media, hire somebody to do your social media. Whatever it is, get some help, because there's so many different facets to launching a business and to growing a business, as you know, right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think outsourcing as well just gives you back so much capacity. And when you hand over the things that you're not really that great at to someone else who is an expert and can do it so much better, it's the biggest load off your back as well. And, having a team, I think things are a lot better in business when you have even just one other person to do things with and just bounce ideas for, and to check all of those ideas that you've got. If you've got a list of 10 things that you want to try or test or that, it's really helpful having someone else that you can talk to about that. One thing I heard you say before was, one of the things that you test is, for how much would they pay in terms of the pricing and that. So I'd love to chat a little bit about that now. What can you tell me about, like, how you test for willingness to pay in those sort of concept testing phases?
Sure. Yes, I'm speaking to the experts, so I'd love to know what you think. Yeah. So, well, what we do is, it's a really basic concept. So the concept will describe the features and benefits and where they can buy it, what kind of varieties it comes in, what size, etc. And at the end, we always have like regular price, recommended price, and feature price. Sometimes it has feature price. So It's like the regular price, and then feature price is when it's on sale. And so typically what I tell my students is to look at competitive products and also think about, like, how much people are willing to pay for that product. And I know you talk a lot about that as well. Like, it's value-based pricing. It's what do consumers see as the value of that product? Yeah, so once we have everything on the concept, I tell them to look at competitive prices for one, but also to think about how much their consumers would be willing to pay. And I know that you're a big believer of that too, which is about the value. What is the value of the product in the consumer's mind, and not necessarily what is the cost to make the product. So we look at that. And then when we ask about the pricing, we ask a question like, Oh, now I'm trying to remember what the price
And that's okay. That's all right.
Okay. So when we ask the question, we get feedback from people as to whether or not they think it's in line, it's what they would expect, or more than what they'd expect, or some even say that it's great, in which case sometimes we think, okay, maybe the price is a bit too low. And so then we adjust it from there. So it's just really about testing their, like just gauging their willingness to pay at that point. And then once we do more of a prototype test is when we would get deeper into what they think of the price at that actual product that they can touch and feel and see. What would they think of the price should be at that point?
Sure. And do you use like Van Westendorp questions for the pricing questions? Oh, sorry, that's all. Sorry. So Van Westendorp is 4 questions to basically, ascertain things like, willingness to pay, price elasticity. And the 4 questions are now I'm going to test my expertise here. So the 4 questions are, so you've presented the product to them, and this is generally a product that doesn't have any competition, because these questions and the resulting numbers and stats don't take into consideration competition. But the 4 questions are basically, at what price would you find this product to be so expensive that you wouldn't consider buying it? At what point would you consider the price to be quite high but not inhibitively so? At what price would you think that it is priced low as a bargain, but it's not going to stop you from buying it? And at what price point is this product priced so low that you would question its quality and you wouldn't buy it? So out of those 4 responses, you'll get kind of a general willingness to pay. It goes a lot more in detail, and it's a lot more advanced than that. But I tend to stay away from the very intense stats side of things. But yeah, it does give a really, really good indication of willingness to pay. And if you ask that question enough times, you get a really good indication of your overall target market's willingness to pay for a product or even a feature. You can do it for features as well. So you could have one group of people where maybe your product has feature A, and then another group of people looks at a product with feature B, and then you do the willingness to pay questions with each of them, and then you can test and see, people who saw feature A had this willingness to pay, whereas people who saw feature B had this willingness to pay, and you can compare and do those sorts of things. But yeah, I was just curious as to whether you guys had those sorts of questions in your
no, but I'm definitely going to look at that.
It would
get that link from you.
Yeah, definitely. Van Westendorp. It's a lot of fun. Okay. And then another one is conjoint analysis. So, if your students, so I think, for a lot of people who have like product businesses, and especially if they're going into something like soaps or candles or that, conjoint would be a really good one, because then you can test things like, the smell of the candle, how big it is, the color, as well as the price. And you can see like what features people care about the most, as well as the price that they care about the most. So
okay, cool. Yeah, no, I mean, typically we don't do sort of like the more paid research. So something like a conjoint would probably be a paid research, but unless they would want to. But unless if you have a large enough customer base, then it's doable. Like you're definitely not going to get the same kind of results as if you ask like 50,000 people. But if you have a large enough customer base and they're willing to do, a survey with, a dozen questions in it, then, it's definitely doable. Where do you normally recommend your students find the people to either do the focus groups or, the Zoom interviews and things like that? Or the surveys? Yeah, no, I give them options, like they can pay for the results, and if they don't have, the group to test it with, there is that option. Or I tell them to find people in your target market that are either recommended to you or from your network. And I know it's not ideal to have people that but sometimes that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
And these are people that are just starting, so I typically find that is kind of the way that they typically go, rather than buying a group to test with.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to finish up by asking you, what advice would you give someone who is just bringing a product or service to market and they're not really sure, how they should price it? What sort of pricing advice would you give them, or value advice would you give them?
Right. Yeah. So I think the same thing that I mentioned is really looking at the value of what consumers are willing to pay, and also to think about, well, how much margin can they make from the product? I know we don't want to think about costs, but if they're bringing something to market, they need to be making some margin, or
Yeah.
else it's really not going to be viable. So I say at least a 50% margin, which is going to give them the ability to eventually, they're going to scale their business and be able to have a bigger margin so they can sell to wholesale. But having that is going to allow them to invest in their business, to be able to sell to like retailers if they want to eventually. So yeah, that's one thing to think about. But definitely we look at the value of what's out there versus competitors, and sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error. They might
Yeah.
start with a price and change it eventually. So the a lower price and then realize, oh no, actually I have to increase it because I'm just
Yeah.
not, getting the traction that I want with that. So yeah, just it's kind of, it's not set in stone forever and ever.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think most businesses, especially in their first year or so, will change the price probably a couple of times as they kind of like figure out what the right point is. I'm really glad too that you mentioned profitability, because I think a lot of people, who are starting out don't really think of profit as something that's that important for them. But like you said, profit is incredibly important because it allows you to invest back into your business. It's going to be the thing that allows you to grow, and it's a big part of why your business will be able to stick around for the long haul. If your business isn't profitable, then it's not going to grow and it's not going to take you anywhere. So yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. Oh, thank you so much again for coming on to the show today, Nicole. This has been a really cool
You're so
conversation.
welcome. Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and I can't wait to have you on mine as well.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for that. Awesome. So that is all done. Don't forget, you can find more free resources either on my website or my free Facebook group, The Pricing on the Cake. Nicole, if anyone wants to get in contact with you and find out more about your course, how can they do that?
For sure. You can just head on over to NicoleDeLarzac.com, and you can either book a time to have a call with me and just chat about your product or product idea, or you can also email me at Nicole@NicoleDeLarzac.com. I'm on every social platform at Nicole de Larzac, and you can also listen to my podcast if you just want to figure out, whether or not you want to launch a product business or learn more about product businesses. That's the Productpreneur Podcast.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Nicole. And until next time, I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.